Greetings, my name is Kegan SOT, and I will give a brief introduction to Robert Kegan's subject-object theory. And I will start by kind of trying to capturing a few themes within the theory and then talk about some of the orders within it. First, we have these fish in the fish bowl, which kind of can be illustrated as a way of being embedded in something. So the fish, they can see what's in the bowl, they can see the other fish, but they can't see the water. So they are embedded in water. The water is everywhere for them, so therefore they don't really see it. And this also is captured by the movie Matrix, where the matrix is everywhere around you. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, but it's something that's, you can't really grasp it, you're embedded in it. So matrix also means womb. Then another theme comes here. It's captured here by a window where we can look out. And the window is here meant to illustrate something that's between us and the world. We can say that we have an inner world and then there's the outer world. And typically we see the outer world as the material world. And the inner world is the world of our thoughts and things like that. But what this window also can illustrate is this boundary we can draw between what we are, what is subject, and what is object. And apart from all the material things out in the world that are objects, we can also think that some things inside of our mind that we can think of or feel, that can be object for us as well. So here, this begs for the question of how do we draw the line between what is subject and what is object? And subject is, what is it that I am? What is it that I see with? And object is, what is it that I can see and that I can have as an object of my awareness? So where do we draw that line? So that's kind of the other theme in Kegan's theory here. And another theme where it's kind of a bit dramatically put here, but this is a Goya's painting depicting exorcism. So the exorcism you see in the background, you see the demons that have possessed this dying man, and the exorcist is trying to kind of pull the demons out of the man. So if you're possessed, which is kind of a common theme in the medieval ages, a common theme here is that if you are possessed, you're not responsible for you are not yourself. You don't talk about that much about being possessed nowadays, but it's still, we have some tendencies. For instance, if I'm gambling a lot and I can't control my gambling, or if I'm addicted to my phone, or if I have some sort of trauma or an addiction from that, then we say that the addiction is can be beyond our control. We can't really control ourselves. And then if we take this and combine with the subject object, we can say that addiction or any possession that we have, something that owns us and controls us, that's not object to us. It's subject. We are the trauma and we are the addiction and we are the thing that happens. And from a therapeutic or exorcist perspective, the object could be here. The goal of the exorcism or the treatment could be to take this that we are exposed to the subject, as we have as a subject, it controls us, and trying to make it as an object so that we can deal with it, we can negotiate with it. It doesn't control us, rather we control it. So this is some themes that come up in Kegan's theory. And another very central aspect is what we refer to as meaning making. It's very at the core of Kegan's theory. And what is meaning making? Well, for instance, meaning making, you can explain that as every experience that you have, everything you see, you don't really record it passively and kind of store it as an objective data. Rather, everything that we experience, we make meaning of it. We say this is important, or this is not important, or this is related to this. And rather, we can illustrate meaning making by a vessel like this. So if the vessel contains all experiences and all things that we can have as an object and all our thoughts or our way of seeing the world, but the shape of the vessel, that's the meaning making. That's the shape. That's how we make sense of everything. And the shape of this vessel, we can say that it's made up of assumptions that we really don't see. We only see our experiences, but we don't see the shape of our meaning making. So the meaning making is made up of all assumptions that we make that we don't see, and also the meaning, the vessel. It's also, you can say that that's really the subject. So the vessel it's what we see with. So meaning making, and then according to Kegan, we can have these Russian dolls as an illustration, because the subject-object theory is really a dynamic theory. It's about, I will go through some of the orders of consciousness, but that's not really the main point. The main point of the theory, the subject-object theory, it is what happens between the stages or between the orders. Because to a great deal of time, we are in transition between different stages or orders. So we're constantly negotiating what we see and what we don't see and what we are. So, for instance, between two stages or orders, what happens is typically that the thing that I identify with, the thing I am, the thing I see with, gradually becomes an object. So the etymology of object means to throw out. So making things an object, making the subject into an object, that's kind of at the core of the dynamics between two orders of consciousness in Kegan's theory. So what is subject at one order becomes an object that I can see at the next order. And this will be maybe clearer when we look at the orders, how they are described. Here's first we start with a simplified description of the three plateaus in adult mental development. This is orders 3, 4, and 5. And Kegan's theory has 6 orders. Starts with the 0th order, where the child starts with being one with everything. And then at roughly 1.5 and 2 years old, the child starts to become aware that I am an individual. I am something that is not part of the world. And there's my mother. I'm not part of my mother either. So that's kind of gradually the world, outside world, becomes an object to the child. But we jump into the socialized mind, which typically occurs at around adolescence, possibly 13 to 15 years old, and onwards throughout life. So in this socialized mind, you're kind of defined by your close social relationships. So characteristics that we see here in this description is that you are typically a faithful follower and you seek direction, and you're not the whistleblower, but rather you want to conform. So this is also described as a conformist aspect of personality. And then you may continue to grow. Typically, the transition from the socialized mind to the self-authoring mind, which a lot of if you look at the typical Western country, you see that roughly maybe half of the population is somewhere in transition between the socialized and the self-authoring mind. And according to Kegan, this typically happens when you move from home. You move somewhere to another city to study. You build a new life. You have new friends. You build some sort of autonomy and an individuality. So the self-authoring mind focuses much around being an individual. And you can see in the traditional society, you didn't do that, but you grew up at the farm and then you stayed at the farm in the same village. So typically the socialized mind was associated with the traditional life, whereas the self-authoring mind is often associated with the modern life. where you kind of move from a new family, build a new relationship, build a new home, and build a new life, more or less, an identity. And then onwards, where some move beyond the self-altering mind into self-transforming mind. You see other aspects. You see words as meta leader, multi-frame, holds contradictions, and interdependent. So this seems to kind of challenge some of the assumptions of the self-altering mind. But let's look at a bit closer at these three levels. So starting with the socialized mind. So in the previous image here, you see descriptions which are more characteristics of different orders. But if you look closer at what does it mean to be at order 3, the socialized mind? What does it mean? Well, I think by the theory, it is defined by what you have as a subject and what you have as an object, which is the subject-object balance. This is where you draw the line between what you are and what you can see and negotiate with and deal with. And subject at the socialized mind, that's the relationships, the closer relationships that you have, for instance, with your parents or with your spouse or your girlfriend, boyfriend, your close relations, you are defined by them. You're defined by others' expectations. So typically, if you go and study, you typically see that maybe you're studying because you kind of want to live up to your parents' expectations. But what you can do, you can take your own needs and wishes and reactions, and you can take them as an object. You are not slave under your own wishes. You can subdue your own wishes and needs, and you can socialize and be a part of the group. So typical concern, main concern that may be articulated, but often are not articulated, but rather it controls me. How do I live up to others' expectations? How do I fit in? Because if I don't, that's really trouble for me. It's really threatening my identity. Moving on to the fourth order, which we refer to as self-altering in mind. And here you can look, if we look at the third one, we have relations, norms, and other expectations as subject. That's what I am. But here we see that relations, norms, and others' expectations, that's what I have as an object now. So the journey from a third order of consciousness to a fourth order, it's to make these norms and others' expectations, and make them as an object that I'm not controlled by. I see them, and therefore they don't have that much power over me. So what is subject now? Well, some sort of individuality or values that I choose myself, or some own ideology and coherent self-system, so that I want to feel and I want to decide who I am. I want to feel who I am. And I don't want to have that imposed on me from others. So a lot of focus around individuality. And one main concern here is that if I'm an individual, if I choose my own values, I want to be true to those values because they are my ideals. But maybe if I'm in an organization or in some sort of institutional context where these values are misaligned with me, then I may be in trouble because I may have a hard time negotiating with that. So trying to find a way where I fit in that way, that's desirable. But rather, most concern of me is I want to have my own values, but I also want to be able to align those with my surrounding institutions. Independence and boundary setting is really important. Seeing myself as an individual rather than only as kind of something that is torn between others' wills and others' expectations. So moving on to order 5, and if you see the pattern now, the self-system and ideology and my ideal of who I want to be, that's the subject. So at next order, that becomes an object. So I can see that, okay, I have this ideal, this is who I am, or rather, that's what I thought. Now I'm not so sure, maybe because I have several ways of several ideologies that I may be able to negotiate. How do I do that? Well, here, rather than talk about we have a self-system, we rather have self-systems here. So a lot of things that have to do with negotiating different conflicts. In the first in the previous order, the fourth order, maybe one such conflict would be to align myself, to align my values with the organizations or the institution. But here, rather, if I have several selves, rather, how can I align different conflicts, conflicts between different aspects of myself? That's not on the same term, maybe. How do I see conflicts out in the world between different ideologies and see the same conflicts within myself? So rather than resolving conflicts, here I would say that what is here more articulated is the letting go of trying to solve conflicts, but rather seeing different conflicts and different things being in friction between each other as more normal condition. Seeing different quests or kind of conflicts or dilemmas as something that doesn't necessarily need to be resolved. So letting go on boundaries, also a common theme here. Allowing harboring inner conflicts and paradoxes without trying to kind of solve them. So dealing with uncertainty is central at this point. So self-system, self-transforming process, accepting that there is no final answer of who I am, rather than I am in a constant renegotiating between different parts of myself. So from this may raise a few questions, and some that I suggest kind of to bring with you and discussing. To which extent are we responsible for our thoughts and actions? If we go back to the exorcist image, or the kind of the trauma image, or the different patterns that we have, when I react to a pattern, to what extent can I be responsible for that? If I'm embedded in something and act from that, am I how can we really say that we are responsible for everything that we can? And second, obviously, from a counseling or coaching perspective, how can we support growth? And should we help growth? Should we facilitate growth at any cost, at all time? Relationship ideals also. How do relationships, what is the view of relationships at these different orders? What if you are in a relationship with a person or several or a group where ideals may differ due to difference in stages? But also conflict management strategies and capabilities. So not only strategies on how you deal with conflict, but also how do you how do your capabilities develop as you grow through these? These are kind of questions that could be good to ponder. But for now, we just say that this is the brief introduction, and hope that you're curious to dive deeper into Kegan's theory. Thank you.